Another misunderstanding I hear a lot of is a lot of times that this is not for your 35-year-old maybe. Some people tell me I'm 30 years old, I'm 25 years old. I don't need ASEA. I'm good. But I'm going to show you why that's not the case and everyone needs this product. And I always explain to people, even in the, whether it's a bodybuilder or not, everything in the essential bundle is going to be your foundational product. Whatever supplement you're taking out there, the essential bundles, if I'm building a house, you want a firm foundation to your health, and this is it. Because if your cells are not communicating to each other, not talking to each other, right, it doesn't really matter a lot of times what you put in your body. If the cells can't communicate and get the messages across to fix what needs to happen, it's not going to be as great, right? So this is where you start building it. So I wanted to go over the cell signaling keywords here today. I know you guys have probably seen this in the past, but I really want to emphasize this. We obviously know they're high energy, they're really tiny molecules, and they're going to be absorbed. And that's a really big thing nowadays, right? I think a lot of people sometimes say, well, ours is nano, our supplements is this and that. These signaling molecules are literally in their smallest form that you can get them. So they're going to pass straight through the cell membrane. They don't need to be broken down anymore. So that's why it's so easy for them to go through the cells and activate and turn on and off switches. For example, the NRF2 pathway, which I'm actually going to talk about. Um, but then again, another question we get is after that is the cascade effect. And some people are always like, well, why is it that you don't, how does it work everywhere, right? And it's through this cascade effect. I don't need to get to every single cell in the body because once you start the signal, it creates that effect, like domino effect. And obviously that's going to lead to your resilience and stress overall. So the reason we say to absorb, because I mean to swish the product in your mouth for about 15 to 30 seconds is because the absorption starts here. Most of it is going to be absorbed right in your mouth through the cells. And that's going to cause that cascading effect. Yeah, there may be some that reaches your digestive system, but most of it is going to be in your mouth. So that's why we recommend, swish it in there 15 to 30 seconds. A lot of individuals also say, well, what should I do? Should I wait before, should I eat or not? Blah, blah, blah. But as long as your mouth is clean, you should be fine. So just make sure your mouth is clean so it doesn't neutralize the cell signaling molecules. Really quick, the way the cell signaling molecules are absorbed, like I talked to you about, they're very tiny. They go through the cell membranes inside the cell, so they don't need permission really to get in. Usually, a lot of supplements, the way they work, they need to be broken down, and then they cling on to receptor sites on the cells to activate it. These don't need to do that. They go straight through. And that's why it's going to cause that on and off switch in your cells to trigger like the NRF2 pathway that we've been talking about, and I'm going to talk about a little more. But once that cascade effect starts, well, it takes a couple of signals to start that reaction. And then once that signal gets it, it gets it to another when they keep talking and they keep talking to each other. And you'll see, right? Like it just triggers all this domino effect. So it's felt through your entire body. Now I wanted to go over the ASEA science with you. And we have a lot of things going on right now. We have a lot of scientific partners around the world. But we're going to specifically focus on today on the NRF2 study that was done in Western Sydney University and Bath University, but also the Aspen study that just came out. There are some really awesome results here from the Aspen study. I think this is just hot off the press. So we'll dive into it as not, we'll talk about all of these. So like my wife says, and I mentioned earlier when I said to her, oh my gosh, it triggers the NRF2 pathway. And she's like, so what? Well, here it is. There's a big whoop. Let's talk about it. NRF2 is your master regulator. It's basically involved in every protein in all the human cells. It's found in every cells. And what it does, it activates your defense systems. So when you're under stress, NRF2 is released. It's usually clung onto this thing called KEAP1. But once it's activated by the cell signaling molecules, it actually goes into the nucleus and activates these things, these antioxidants in your bodies. And antioxidants like glutathione. We all hear glutathione nowadays. Like, a lot of people go and get injections maybe, or you hear about some other things like superoxide dismutase. But this is actually what starts it, the NRF2 pathway. So again, what it controls, like I was saying, the antioxidant enzymes. It also controls the inflammation pathways. And specifically, there's one called NFKB. NFKB, when it's activated a lot, it causes a lot of inflammation. And what the NRF2 pathway does, it almost turns down the volume to this pathway. So your inflammation is going to decrease. Again, it's going to also help with the cellular detoxification, which is going to lead to your resilience to stress. Um, one of the biggest things for NR2 that happens is the glutathione is created. Glutathione is basically your body's master antioxidant. It's recognized to be one of your most important antioxidants that's made internally. So it's present in every single cell, so it's fundamental to just protect you. It does a lot of things. It bolsters your immune system. It helps with your detoxing process. Again, and it operates everywhere. And in fact, I was reading this really interesting article the other day that was talking about certain viruses that attack the cells so they're not able to produce glutathione, so they don't get basically your natural killer cells in your body can't protect themselves. So that's how important it is. Even some viruses recognize that, hey, we don't want too much glutathione in your body because you're going to be able to defend against us. So again, that's the importance of it, right? You need to that. And it also, one big thing I want to highlight about this is that glutathione actually helps in the detox process in your liver. So it helps to really, eliminate those xenobiotics. For example, you have your food additives, your pollutants, things like that. And that's really huge nowadays. I don't think I mean, here in Salt Lake, we have terrible pollution. We have terrible things. I think nowadays we're exposed to so many toxins out there. So we need glutathione. So the challenges, though, that I was talking about earlier with glutathione is sometimes you hear people you have to go get injections, which require them going to, regularly to do that. But there are also other ways that you can do orally, but it's very poor oral absorption. So it's not going to be absorbed as great. And also, you have a limited bioavailability of this. So you may not even reach the bloodstream. Whatever you just took, whatever you just did, it may just be limited because it's not reaching your target cells in sufficient quantities. And there is also an age-related decline with glutathione. There's a lot of studies that show as you age or you're going through a lot of, let's say you have an illness or you're an athlete, like me, for example, when I do 2 a days, we're doing cardio for an hour in the morning, and then I do weights, and then I do cardio again at night. You are producing a lot of inflammation. Inflammation is good to a certain extent. You just don't want it to be chronic, and that's where it gets bad. So here's the problem. I made these graphs out so you can kind of see visually what happens. Let's suppose you're at 20-year-old, your NRF2 levels, let's say they're 100%. As you age, you can see there is a decline, keeps going down. But what happens too is that unfortunately, your chronic inflammation and disease risk increase as well. So that definitely does not help us, right? I mean, we're inversely here. So, um, and this is another one too. I made the glutathione levels actually decrease as you age. So again, substantially, right? So if a 30-year-old says, "Oh, nothing's happening in my body," no, there's a lot of things happening in your body. You're just not feeling it yet. But then again, here's another research I pulled out from that was really interesting. Let's say you lived in a world where there was no toxin, you were not stressed at all, and everything was just perfect. That you can see the green curve right there. This is your conceptual trajectory of your NFKB, of that inflammation marker I was talking about that just triggers a lot of inflammation. It will increase naturally, right? But what happens though, what happens if you're in a very stressful environment? What happens like if you're living in our current world, right? So that level of NAKB activity increases substantially. So if you can see like a 30-year-old, a 25-year-old, their levels are going to be a lot higher because why? Because we're going through a lot of stressful times. Whether you're 25, 30 years old, 35, 80 years old, you're going to be under stress. So what do we decide here with a C? And I think is just brilliant. What we're realizing is the cell signaling molecules or ARS or the gold or renew, we're doing it differently than anyone else that I see out there. We're going to activate your own ability to produce glutathione. So you're going to stimulate your cells to basically synthesize more glutathione than adding it externally. So again, for example, traditional antioxidants you can take like vitamin C or vitamin E's, they're not bad, right? It's not bad, but the problem is that only a single molecule will neutralize a single free radical, and they're really short-lived, right? So again, they're primarily all these things like vitamin C's and E's, they're reactive. They're not there to prevent it. They're not there to keep you in the future from getting something like that, right? So again, what we're doing is going to be preventative. And then here is the two individuals that we worked with the NRF2 research, Charest and Gerald. As we researched this, right, we realized that, as I was saying, earlier, what happens is that the redox cell molecules cling onto the keep one. The NRF2 goes into the nucleus, and this makes the nucleus react and stimulates it, so it creates more glutathione. And it looks like that's misspelled the glutathione, but that's how you spell it in Spanish. So I didn't change that. Sorry, I forgot. It says glutathione. But so this is the other version, right? So redox cell signaling molecules connecting to it. Boom, 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 going into the nucleus, triggering glutathione production. And again, it's not just activating glutathione. That's just one of the ones I highlighted. But in your cells, you have up to 200 different genes that actually positively affects it once you trigger your NRF2 pathway. Here are some, for example, your HEM oxygenase, you have your superoxide dismutase, and we could have a whole session about these and what they do. And a lot of individuals will say too, or if they ever ask you, well, did ASEA come up with these things, or you guys making all this up? No, there's a lot of research out there that we know once NRF2 is triggered or what it does, there are tons and tons of research articles there showing the positive effects that NRF2 has. And if someone ever wants or has questions on it, you can literally type it in PubMed or Google, find research on like what the NRF2 pathway does and its positively effect on your themes. Um, So this was some of the results we had, right, with the NRF2 expression with the gold, redox gold. There was an 160% increase. That's huge. That's amazing. And then when we saw even Renew had an increase in glutathione production. So when individuals ask me, can I use Renew for pains and aches or should I use redox gold? Well, to me, I look at this data. Clearly, I would use redox gold because it's going to increase more of your glutathione, which is going to help with inflammation. And obviously, Renew, we know it's so great with, like, for example, fine lines and wrinkles. Um, we've seen great testimonials with stretch marks and things like that, so more cosmetic nature as well. And gold to me, honestly, it's a lifesaver. So I put it into my daily routine. I have terrible knees. I used to play soccer back in the day, and I'm starting to feel it. And when I lift really heavy, and you can feel that, and it's amazing just to see and feel the results immediately. Um, so it's definitely one of a kind product we have here too. Um, so this is also the glutathione levels that we saw as well with the redox signaling molecules, right? So again, these amounts, again, Gerald, when he saw these results, he couldn't believe it. He went back about 2 or 3 times. He's like, "Oh, I cannot believe the results I'm seeing," because he had not seen something like this. A product endogenously increasing glutathione levels to this extent, this quickly, or like here is our newest one, the Aspen study. Uh, I want you to pay close attention on our participants real quick that we picked here. We did choose 30 healthy adults that were between the ages of 21 to 55. This is an age group that a lot of individuals, this age group says, we don't need it, we're healthy. What is it going to do for me? Well, this is what they did. They consumed 4 ounces a day. Um, so they did this obviously twice daily into that. And then we monitored the outcomes and we saw amazing results, even with this group that usually says we don't need it. One, there's great things three here. Interleukin 1 beta, it's a signal inflammation, and we saw a decrease of 89%. That's substantial. What interleukin 1b is actually triggered from that NFKB um, pathway that I showed you earlier that increases as we age or increases when you're under a lot of stress or inflammation. And interleukin 1b, what it's a signaling molecule that signals to the body an alert to increase inflammation. So if you can decrease all these signals in the body, you're going to obviously effectively be helping out with, your chronic inflammation, which we can, again, I don't know if Katrina would kill me, but there's a lot of information out there that shows what chronic inflammation does, and you can research it. So you want those down. IL-6 as well, it decreased as well. And again, more information or studies showing that yes, we are increasing glutathione. And here's more of a visual reduction that we saw here with the interleukin 1 beta over 120 days. And this is another topic or conversation we can have about this, that the real deal a lot of times is not every individual is going to feel effects with ARS 1 day or 2 days, 3 days. Sometimes it takes a lot longer. And I understand a lot of individuals complain about that because it's like, well, I don't want to invest this much money into this because I haven't seen it work. But, our results will say, 60 to 120 days is when you start seeing a lot of these drops in inflammation, what we saw in the 1LB, right? And it's worth it. If you told me that you have a product that's going to allow me to stay healthy and not, you know, allow me to reach my potential and in peak in everything I do in life, I'm going to take it if you're telling me that I'm not going to get sick as much. And in fact, I want to share with you something real quick. So last year, I was with ASEA for about 9 years, and I went away for about a year, did my own thing, and I didn't have access to ASEA as much. And I'm very meticulous on everything I do with my nutrition. Obviously, I'm those people that's what I did my bachelor's in, that's what I did my studies in, because I believe nutrition and that in itself could be medicine. If you know what you're eating right or you're taking care of yourself. And one thing is I noticed, and I went back and I looked through my journal because I keep about how many grams of protein was I eating in October? How many carbs was I eating? And what I noticed though, I started not recovering as quickly as I used to. And I started getting sick a lot more. I started getting colds. And I was like, what has changed? And I was like, oh my gosh, I haven't taken a SIA. And it's been 2, 3 months now. And that was the one thing that had changed in my protocol. And I started to feel it. And again, you may say I'm 35 years old. Um, and a lot of individuals or friends that I talk to my age as well, they're usually like, well, I'm healthy. But, I think there's ways we can obviously talk to them about that. And I am a testimonial that you need to be consistent with this. And you be consistent and disciplined with this. Sometimes results don't happen overnight.